Democrats say Republicans for balanced budgets are extremists. Before I consider the promotion by Joe Biden in May of June to gay National Nuclear Incineration Gambling Bling Month and how the prospect for incineration for most of the civilization of Northern Hemisphere makes short-selling that hemisphere and investing in South American and African futures worth the risk if one flips the usual picture of the Earth. Tierra del Fuego is the key prestigious point of departure to Valhalla, formerly known as Antarctica, and the Arctic Ocean is scientifically recognized as Earth's a-hole. I will comment on my disappointment with Minion Radio's reporting on the war in Sudan in regard to the RSV. Democrats say Republicans are extremists and that making America great again is dangerous because it was wicked rather than great before. I had pneumonia before, and that wasn't great. Long ago in the winter of 2010-2011, I contracted what I believe was pneumonia staying at a homeless shelter in Anchorage in December. I should have spent all of the winter in a tent and skipped getting what might have been pneumonia. Being broke with no cash to launder clothes and without clean socks, I made the mistake of sharing floor space among several people with frostbite who perhaps hadn't clean socks or gloves either. So I left after Christmas and returned to a tent, killed my gut biome drinking ice water for months, put on weight, and clogged my lung. A couple of years passed before the lung clogging decreased appreciably, and perhaps 5 years before I could recover 60 or 70% of capacity. After that, it improved about 5% a year. Today, after 12 years, I have about 95% lung capacity compared to before. Maybe it gets better 1% annually. Residual stickiness in the airway made morning phlegmatic coughing a never-ending new normal. So I wonder what it really was. RSV? Listening to Minion Radio, aka NPR, concerning Sudan, it's the only station I get at a roadless region in a borough in southeast Alaska. I learned that the Rapid Support Forces were attacking RSV. The federal government issued an ineffective vaccine approval against Republican strangulation virus during National Asian Political Activist Cookie Month, May. Hikaru Nakamura is the world Fischer Random chess champion, and I thought his contribution to Asian American advance was nearly as significant as that of activist cookies. Yet he wasn't mentioned in the headlines. If Nakamura could bake and jiggle activist cookies while winning Chess Night 60 tournaments, maybe he would get an honorable mention next May. If the Rapid Support Forces can defeat the RSV, I will breathe easy once again, and maybe begin a career as a Walmart door greeter, provided I can get college financing to attend door greeter college. Rapid Support Forces bring hope to everyone suffering from RSV or listening to Minion Radio, learning of the wonderful economy destroying the ecosphere, with immigrant workers making it grow because there isn't an affordable alternative. That reminds me of the 2024 presidential campaign. Joe Biden does have a wealth of convincing campaign slogan material available. Re-elect me. I have raised the debt ceiling higher than at any time in U.S. history, and will do it again. Or, re-elect me in 2024. You ain't seen nothing yet. I will keep nuclear war to a bare minimum needed to bring the Democrat Party way of life liberating all the earth. Just a continent or three will be out of order for a brief period, and that's all good. A compromise was reached to raise the debt ceiling for a couple of years in exchange for terminating enough IRS workers to let the rich get away with clever tax dodges. This is a nonpartisan anti-bigot provision, including rich Democrats. After 2 years of Joe Biden in office, I guess it's easy to discern Democrat Party patterns of governance. One sorts through dregs at the bottom of awful piles in the plain of Mars. I pointed out that Democrats talk a good environmental game and increase taxes on the rich game when they haven't the political position to actually get either thing done. When they have the power, they find some way to avoid it and blame Republicans or Senator Joe Manchin. Manchin took the hit from his party for blocking the minimalist von Biden environmental plan that helped get him elected to pretend to fix global warming. Joe Biden, of course, would say that what passed was part of his greatest environmental work of any U.S. administration ever. Joe Manchin was recently rewarded with construction of a gas pipeline in North Carolina that environmentalists hate. That might have been payback for taking the hit on the environmental bill. Even if the pipeline goes from Virginia rather than West Virginia and Senator Manchin doesn't get a kickback for doing the dirty work, President von Biden still looks rather lame environmentally speaking after SCOTUS decided to let property owners fill in wetlands that aren't directly connected to a big body of water. There are too many frogs and amphibians in wetlands, as it is, that creep into chemical untreated spaces, leaving unsightly corpses. Democrats are quite upset that the daycare and diapers for Democrat environmental bill didn't pass unscathed. Without a federal debt limit that could have funded special made-in-America diapers built by union workers that have the logo reading Republicans are extremists printed around the exit strategy for public debt on every patriotic baby's bottom, the primary job for Democrat politicians is to assure their wealth and re-election so one cannot begin indoctrinating the masses too soon. Democrats don't understand that modern war isn't a legal case in a courtroom. Nature is not a courtroom. Neither is evolution a court. It is more like a roulette wheel that favors the bold, rational, or lucky, with no regard for legal opinions, claims a president. History, nature, and international relations require cold, rational logic and understanding rather than belligerence in an adversarial system of justice, refereed by an independent judiciary if one wishes to avoid nuclear conflict. In war strategy, the president has decided that Russians will not use tactical nuclear weapons to defend against the approaching Ukrainian offensive. He has gambled the future of the United States and suggested that Russia can have peace if they surrender what is regarded now as Western Russia and Crimea to Ukraine. With the legacy of Bill Clinton and British thermonuclear unit advantages over Russia, the administration's gamble that Russia can be defeated with conventional weapons and Ukrainian casualties is proceeding toward the penultimate denouement in the exciting series' second season. What is the logic for use of battlefield nukes anyway? The only precedent, a legal precedent I suppose, set by the Democrat Party President Harry S. Truman, is that nuking Nagasaki and Hiroshima spared the USA 250,000 combat casualties. That was the number of dead Americans believed to have been the price for invading Japan to root out the evil emperor and his minion loyalist extremists. So President Putin might need to decide after careful calculations if he would save at least 200,000 Russian lives if he nukes Ukraine instead of fighting with Wagner troops or conscripts from the regular army of Russia. I would guess the calculation is close to reaching the point of Truman validation. Those legal calculations are difficult and need be worked by a good lawyer to assure rule of law is adequately supplied. With so many of Russia's leaders charged with war crimes and one-way sanctions applied to that belligerent nation, and the prospect for war crimes trial in The Hague given to President Putin, one might reasonably expect the Russian leader to use 50 battlefield nukes in Ukraine in response to the Ukrainian offensive at an early stage rather than later, in order to conserve his remaining conventional forces for recovery of land taken by Ukrainian soldiers and to help defend against a possible U.S. military response in Russia to the nuclear escalation. The von Biden administration pursues its narrative in Ukraine against Russia with the same no-negotiating stance as it did in the budget negotiation. Not until Democrats encountered existential limits would they negotiate. In the case of Ukraine, that probably means when the first existential challenge, mile or kilometer marker presents, perhaps battlefield nuclear weapons to von Biden Democrats, the president may decide to negotiate an in-place end of conflict. During the Cold War era, the mutually assured destruction policy precluded nuclear war. The Biden administration has apparently failed to see that tactical nuclear weapons can be used in Ukraine without mad policy being invoked. For President von Biden would need to choose to escalate with nuclear attacks on Russia, and that would lead to invocation of mad policy. U.S. nuclear attacks on Russia are likely to lead to Russian attacks on the United States, and though the damage might initially be limited, it is probable that fairly soon the entire nations of Russia and the USA would be engulfed in Holocaust. Pressuring Russia to deploy the first use of nuclear weapons since that of the United States and Japan in 1945 seems rather crazy or mad. If President Biden wasn't a Democrat with inherently irrational party blinders about his brain that regard nonconformists to his party's worldview as extremist, one might hope he would comprehend the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine isn't more unthinkable by Vladimir Putin than it was to Harry Truman. One might hope that after the use of nukes, President Biden would decide not to escalate and would seek peace. He is a Democrat, though. The party of slavery and human trafficking, illegal alien workers of World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Syrian Civil War, etc. The party where the U.S. can have as much public debt as that of the rest of the world combined, and it would never matter as Democrat politicians need only be concerned with being reelected. Is the United States more secure if it helps build a super Europe, regardless of it sporting a neo-Nazi revival or not? The minimum collateral or derivative consequence of von Biden policy is that Europe can become a rival to rule the world, competing with China and the United States, while Russia sort of watches from the middle. Even if the King of England doesn't elevate the youth knighthood states to peer status in a recrudescent British Empire, sufficient excitement will develop that a season 5 or 6 of Democrat Party presidents in the world of war may be created. One must wait until 2025 before Mass Effect 4 is released, if Northern Hemisphere civilization still exists after the von Biden administration, and meek non-nuclear nations of the world haven't yet inherited the Earth. A new world of war might be good viewing for those that like Call of Duty and that sort of thing.